Poultry producers continue to count their losses following the outbreak of a highly infectious avian influenza. Gauteng has been the hardest hit for the H7 strain, while the Western Cape is the hardest hit with the H5 strain. The Department of Agriculture says over 1 million chickens have been culled since the outbreak started. The question is, have chronic vaccine shortages played a role in this outbreak? We're joined by the National Animal Health Forum chairperson, Gerard Schutte. Thank you so much, Gerard, for speaking to us on SA Tonight this evening. Now, Onderstepoort Biological Products is responsible for the manufacturing of many of our country's livestock vaccines. And they get their fair share of criticism in the agricultural sector, some of it fair, some of it unfair. In this instance with avian influenza, have vaccine shortages played a role in the outbreak?
No, in this instance, not at all. South Africa has a status with the World Organization for Animal Health in terms of avian influenza as a country that does not vaccinate. Now, we saw that with foot and mouth. Once we have real problems, we start to think of vaccination. And that's exactly where the industry is, the poultry industry currently with Dalrot. Looking at our status with the World Organization for Animal Health in the future. But if they go to a status of vaccination in the poultry industry, they will import the vaccines from Europe and the US. And at a later stage, also look at local production, but I think that will be in the private sector. So, avian influenza is a worldwide problem currently. It's really big in terms of the animal industries, and we are very worried. But OBP did not have a hand in this one.
In terms of vaccines, we've seen the devastating impact on the poultry sector. So many farmers have been hit incredibly hard. We're seeing the shortages on the shelves. So consumers are worried as well. Is vaccines the way to go to prevent avian influenza? And why don't we vaccinate currently in SA?
Well, if you look at the World Organization for Animal Health, if you have a status of non-vaccination, then you can export. So it's all about taking business decisions in future. But of course, there are a lot of other vaccines that are produced by OBP that are problems, and perhaps we can talk about those.
Absolutely. Registering a vaccine for the free market, for instance, has been incredibly challenging. Just looking at African horse sickness as an example, what are some of the major challenges that livestock farmers encounter with vaccine availability and shortages from OBP?
Well, in the last 10 years, it did not go very well in terms of vaccine availability from Onderstepoort Biological Products. I always say it's a bit like Eskom. The load shedding is getting more and longer, and that is very very depressing for us in the industries. And we must always remember that, if you don't have vaccines, first of all, you produce less. But second of all, there can be pandemics, and then there's also zoonosis. Some of these vaccines can also influence human health. And looking at agriculture, 50% of agricultural GDP is with livestock industries. And we look at meat, poultry, wool, mohair, dairy, ostriches, and then also very, very important genetic material exports. We have great stud animals in South Africa, and we can only export if we have a good status with the World Organization. So we need vaccines in order to create herd immunity and in order to also create an export status for our products, and that's very important. And then we must always remember 40% of all livestock in South Africa belongs to the emerging sector. 1.2 million households in South Africa owning livestock, and that plays a very, very, very big role in income security and food security. And what's ironic here is that there are some control diseases that in the Act dictates that farmers should vaccinate against those, but in some instances the vaccines are not available.
Let's talk for a moment about the need for serious policy changes or interventions around vaccine availability and pricing in the free market. Do you think we need a radical overhaul?
Well, we know what we want and what we need. What we need is more private enterprise involvement. And I can say that we did progress in this regard. I think currently there's about 21 different vaccines in the animal industry in South Africa being produced by private sector. And that is good. What I can say is that the National Animal Health and the 9 provincial animal health forums have very, very good communication with Dalrad, with the minister, with the DG. And we had a very specific example a few months ago with blue tongue vaccine that was not available. And overnight, we got a registration from Act 36. And blue tongue vaccine is now being produced in the private sector. So you correctly said that there is a bit of a bottleneck in terms of registrations of new vaccines for the private sector with Act 36 and 35. But we had very good comms with Dalrad, as I've already said. We always engage positively in this regard from industry. But the one that is worrying us very much now is African horse sickness. We are moving in season now. We did everything from industry side to take hands with OBP in order to get the vaccine on the table. And we're not sure OBP has enough in this regard. And that's a very worrying one because there is no private registration in place. But what we always say is OBP is a national strategic unit. We must not wish OBP away. They have still a very big role to play, but we must mitigate our risks in the industry. More than one producer of the same product is always good in terms of pricing, and it's good policy.
And the more of our national resources that are better managed and are able to support farmers, the better. So thank you so much for those insights. Really enlightening to know that at least vaccine shortages have not played a role in this avian influenza outbreak. And we hope to see some progress and some relief for farmers there. We know that they are always under extreme pressure. That was Gerard Schutte, national chairperson, of the National Animal Health Forum.